economic blueprints cannot wake up and say, oh, because I hate him, he's my friend, let me go rock up to his house and read him when his family is there. We don't want to see such scenes again, and they will only be a figment of our imagination. They will only be a distant past if our reforms are intentional, if they are deliberate, and if they are forthright, and if we are all committed to the same particular process. Thank you very much, Amerix, for having me.
Thank you very much, Francis. Let me go back to Jimmy. Jimmy, can we continue the discussion again about the debt? You were talking about the four levels of debt in this country.
Yes, Amerix, I'm glad to be back. I was saying that we have what you call 4 pockets of debt. And the 4 pockets are described this way. The Paris Club pocket. This Paris Club pocket is the pocket that has the Bretton Woods institutions, IMF, World Bank, and a lot of the Western bilateral agreements. We have another, which is called the London Club debt. The London Club debt is where you have Eurobond, and you have syndicated loans. Very expensive debt. Then you have the Chinese debt. Some of it, most of it, very kosher, but there's been some malfeasance, which I'll explain shortly. It's very soft, but I'll tell you of something that was glaringly a big fraud on Kenyans. And the last pocket is what you call domestic debt. Now, remember what I said earlier, that in what is called the medium to long term, our law is very clear: you can only borrow for development. Only borrow for development. So you'll find in the bilateral, what you call the Paris Club debt, the bilateral ones, you'll find them on the budget. You'll find line items. For example, USAID is funding a bridge in Lamu, for example. Or British aid is funding something in education. Or there is a road being built by the Italians, and it's on the budget. It is always in what you call the appropriations bill. The appropriations bill is basically the budget according to our laws. Now, you'll find that. You'll find there is support for IMF and World Bank. It is about going to line items, what are called vote items in the budget. Some of this IMF money I'll come to later, we are questioning what it's about because it is not in the budget. Now, you come to what you call this new pocket that was introduced over the last 10 years or so, called the London Club pocket. Kibaki took a small portion of it as he was exiting, but it was really perpetuated under this regime of Uhuru. That pocket of London is expensive commercial money, more or less commercial money. It comes from private investors. Eurobond comes from private investors looking for where they can put their money, right, and earn a good interest rate. So the interest rate was taken for our first Eurobond of 2 billion was about 6 or 7%, but it has gone up. Now, Eurobonds that the Uhuru government took was 7 billion. They've also taken a similar amount under syndicated loans, 7 billion. And I can tell you today that none of that money, because it is long term, it is beyond 1 year, none of that money, you're talking about $15 billion, appears anywhere in our budget. It funds not one project. It does not even, we don't even have it as appearing in the consolidated fund. It does not fund one item on the budget. That is your London Club pocket, and it is very expensive. Then you have the Chinese debt. The Chinese debt, most of it is anchored in our budget. It is very clearly stipulated what projects they are supporting. Right? If we are doing a road, if we are doing SGR, it has been there. But SGR has been a fraud of monumental proportions. And I'll simply
Either we want a regime change or it's a revolution. Then, if it is a revolution, there is something that is key whereby we need to change our system of governance, because I think that is the elephant in the room, and that is what has brought us here. The people who gave us the 2010 constitution, they gave us a very good document that focused so much on human rights, but there is a place I think we were played on. We were played in terms of representation, and we were given one of the most expensive constitutions in the world. If you look at representation at the county level, representation at constituency level, I think the number of legislators that we have in the country can represent the whole of Africa, even 2 or 3 continents. If you look at the numbers, we have 416 members of parliament. That is now at the Senate, and then at the August House, that is where the MPs reside. We have 290 MPs, 47 women rep as of to date, and I'm not gender biased. I'm still unable to understand what their roles are in the society, and if you look at the both divide of the political class that we have in Kenya, they are just there. They are literally doing nothing. If you go to the MCAs, we have 25, 26, 14, 50 elected, and the others are they come from. I see most are nominated by the parties. They actually have got nothing to do, so that the likes of Alai, the only thing they do nowadays, instead of going around doing the work that they are ought to have done as per the constitution, they are blogging for Ruto. That is what they have become. We have a very expensive constitution and members of parliament, whereby we need 20 billion annually in order to be servicing this part of government, this arm of government. If you take the money that we are paying these people like annually, you can, if you take the 20 billion that we pay the member of parliament, you can build 143 primary schools every year at a budget of around 20 million. You can either build another 500 secondary schools every year at a budget of 40 million shillings per secondary school. You can build 100 district hospitals every year. You can build a budget of around 200 million shillings. 50 million shillings in terms of health centers. You can build 6 national state-of-the-art hospitals in the country if you take that money. So, the thing I was pondering about, and this alludes to what Luca was talking about governance. Why should we have people?
Can anyone hear Kingsman? I cannot hear him.
No.
Oh my gosh, the IT over here is no, I don't know. Anyway, so Hillary, do you want to chime in before we bring in?
No. It's okay.
Can I chime in, Marge?
Yes, please.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So, Marge, what I would like to say is this: that we should not lose sight of substance and secondary issues, or substance and side issues. I know a lot of people have attacked the 2010 Constitution. The problem is not the Constitution. For example, the Constitution does not set the pay scale for members of parliament. The constitution may provide for the number of representation, but you could pay them $2 each. You could pay them 100 shillings each. You could pay them $20,000 shillings per month. So the amount of money wasted in providing these charlatans with largesse is not anchored on the Constitution. These are subsidiary legislation they have passed, which we can nullify. The Constitution is not the problem, and that's not the mischief to be fixed. Everybody pointing at the Constitution either is doing so because they have been confused or because they have not thought about this issue correctly. The problem, number one, is corruption. The amount of money we are losing from corruption is 1 million, 10 million, 10 billion times what we are paying, say, for example, our quote-unquote representatives who are not even representing us. For example, Uhuru Kenyatta, the despot, said he was losing, or his regime was losing 2 billion shillings a day. He didn't tell us from where. He didn't tell us who was stealing. He did not stop the stealing. He did not arrest anyone. Nobody was charged. Nobody has been convicted. The money has never been recovered. So which means they know exactly where the money is being stolen, who is stealing, but they don't want to do anything about it because they are the ones who are stealing. So I think we have to identify the problem correctly. The Constitution can be maintained the way it is, and still we can save the country a lot of money if we stop corruption and theft, entrepreneuring, and if we reduce the amount of money that the so-called representatives are being paid. Now, regarding the women or woman reps, the problem is not the fact that women representatives exist and that they do nothing. It is the quality of the women reps, which then calls into question how do these political parties choose who the representatives are? They choose their girlfriends, they choose their relatives, they choose their cronies, they choose their cronies who are the most incompetent and significantly with absolutely no integrity. So of course, they end up doing nothing. Finally, CDF was declared unconstitutional by the High Court. It was appealed and the Supreme Court said CDF is unconstitutional. It's supposed to be disbanded. It is this of the money is lost. I'll give you an example. Recently, there is a member of parliament from Mumias. I think his name is Salasia. Published his payslip. That at the end of every month, when you take out all the payments, which are payments he is making to mortgage, vehicles, whatnot. So these are not necessary expenses, but regardless, at the end of the month, he says, I am left with less than 3,000 Kenya shillings. So we would expect somebody who is completely pauperized. We wouldn't even expect him to afford a vehicle. We wouldn't expect him to be able to take flights, to buy air tickets. We wouldn't expect him to be drinking expensive alcohol. Things that we see every day, he does. So where does he get the money? CDF. So we are subsidizing these people's ostentatious lifestyles through bribery called CDF. And why is it there? It's not there for the bursaries that people are telling you, oh, this member of parliament is doing this or that. No. The executive wants the CDF to continue because it is CDF they are using to bribe members of parliament. As long as 100 million is given to a member of parliament, they will take 80 million and put in their pockets, and the rest they can dangle as crumbs for the poor people in their constituents, and people will be clapping. So there is a lot of work that we need to do. But to do that, we have to think critically about what we are saying, what the problems are with our institutions, because we could also end up being distracted, like I have seen people being distracted to the Constitution. The mischief is not in the Constitution. There is nothing defective in our Constitution. The problem is failure to enforce it the way it was meant to be. Because if we enforced it and implemented the way it was supposed to be, Chapter 6 would eradicate all the problems of governance. But Chapter 6 has never been enforced. Thank you.
Thank you so much, General.
Marge, if I could just finish, because I think I dropped.
Yeah, you dropped. Yeah.
For a minute or two. And then,
Yes, please.
We can give the mic to someone else.
Please go on, Kingsman. I think Kingsman cannot speak. Okay, now, Lady Justice.
Neto, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, but I think the mic has been given to Lady Justice. Lady Justice?
Thank you. I'd like to take this opportunity to honor the lives that have been lost so far and to also send condolences to the families who are bereaving their loved ones. I want to agree with what Dr. Miguna has just said, that, our constitution is not the problem. In fact, we have one of the best constitutions in the world. The focus should just be on how do we implement this, and perhaps it starts with electing people who are invested in seeing the prosperity of Kenyans. And with that aside, if we're talking about the next pressure point, I'm always conflicted about, yes, we are saying Ruto must go, but how is the next person going to lead Kenya? Because as we already know that we have foreign influence in the country, we have people like IMF, making statements here and there, tells you that they have, they have big interest in the country. How do we get rid of these people? How do we put pressure on the international bodies to take their hands off of Kenya? How do we stop neo-colonialism so that our leaders are not presented with a situation where Ruto is in bed with these people, is being provided with a very, very bad financial bill, and he's told that you have to let your people sign this, you have to let your people pass this. How do we do away with these other people? Because it's not just a matter of doing away with one bad leader. We could bring in another great leader there tomorrow. Let's say, for example, Hillary goes to be the next president, or even Marge. But then Marge gets in there and is like, I cannot do what I need to do for my country, knowing me back. So how do we do with the foreign influence? I yield. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lady Justice. It so happens that anytime a speaker finishes speaking, I'll be, interacting the space in the comment section. That's why there was a small delay over there. So I have been informed, like we planned previously, that we're going to finish at the top of the hour. There has been some comment on the section where somebody's wondering why the speakers are the only one speaking in the beginning. I would like to clarify that these were invited speakers, and when people invite speakers, they speak first, and then we have others chime in. So this is nothing outside the ordinary. So let's have Sirikali ya Kenya, then Doreen, in that order, 2 minutes each, and then at I think 40 past, we're going to have the main speakers make closing remarks.
Hi everybody. I greet you in the name of the revolution, and I'm here to say that I like what the speakers have presented and what they've outlined. as things that we need to keep in our minds. And I really truly appreciate Hillary and crew for hosting this and making sure that the conversation goes on. A lot has been happening, but few things that I'd want to mention is that one, in terms of what the people want, it's clear the people want a break from the current system, and it's clear when you say that you want a break from the current system is that we want to end corruption first. We want to end the people who put their bellies first instead of the poor people on the ground. We want to say that it's time that these people, if they cannot shape up, they ship out. And it's very simple. That's what the people want. It's clear. It's been on the streets. It's been everywhere on the media. And we know it. We have it. We feel it. So what, as what the people want is quite clear. Secondly, the constitution, and I'm very glad to be sharing the space with Miguna, Buka, and the rest of the comrades, Mkawasi, and the rest of the comrades who are here. The constitution has all the answers. You cannot say that we have an expensive constitution, yet what we have are political bad manners, people who are there goons, crooks, bloodletting rascals. How do we have to put up with these people and then we say that the constitution is very expensive? They're making it very expensive for us to live. So I think it's also clear about the constitution. It has all the answers, only implementation. Make implementation work. Implement the constitution as it is without missing a dot or a question mark or a comma. Third, as I finalize, I'd want to say that to make things continue moving, I think we must encourage as many. Yes, I know we are leaderless, we are tribeless, but one thing is we have to make more Kenyans and more Kenyans join the organizing, join the planning, join the decision-making table. So we need all those platforms set up as soon as possible so that we are able to maintain this current revolution. Good night, everybody.
And thank you so much.
In the name of the revolution.
Yes, and thanks for your submission and for keeping the time. Doreen, over to you. Doreen, can you hear me? Then Aduen, please. And then Komwanza, 2 minutes each.
Thank you much. I hope I am audible enough.
Loud and clear.
Thank you. People, seeing Ruto and Raila unite is a classic case of the corrupt political class uniting against us, the people of Kenya. And this is because they don't want to be held accountable for their ill-gotten wealth. You remember when we requested for an audit of public fund, all we wanted was to know who borrowed the money on behalf of Kenyans. For what purpose was the money? Was this money used for the intended purpose? I believe this document should be readily available with the Auditor General. Instead of Ruto doing the needful, he comes up with some unconstitutional task force. People, the unity you see between the political class against Kenyans is because they are all, and I mean all, guilty and want their ills covered. The battle we are fighting is a battle between the future of Kenya versus the status quo. Secondly, today, this regime is possessed with class divisions. It used to be dynasty versus hustler. Then we moved from working class versus Jokali. That was the period of housing levy. Today, I'm amazed to see them pulling the gender card on the kware of death victims. Remember, the kware of death victims is just a few meters away from a police post. Woe unto us, we wake up to the news of all those the policemen who are manning the kware police post,
they have all been transferred. And Ruto pretends to be wondering why Kenyans are angry. These transfers is a classic example of what angers Kenya. All those policemen should be prosecuted. And Ruto needs to know, or somebody needs to remind him, that Kenya already moved from police force to police service. These people must offer their services to Kenyans. Once they fail on their services, let them go home like every other company. And therefore, back to the main topic. Where then is our next pressure point? Aside, somebody had suggested sitting peacefully on the main streets. And therefore, aside peaceful sitting on our main streets, I would therefore suggest all of us in this forum, plus our friends wherever they are, whether you are in the diaspora or you are in the Kenyan soil, can we all take time and write emails to ICC with videos and photos of those massacred? Can we just agree that on Tuesday, as people will be marching to send Ruto home, on Tuesday as we go on the street, that Monday evening, just before the dawn of Tuesday, we all write to ICC with the videos and photos of the exact things or massacre that is happening in Kenya. That would be my next pressure point. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Nyara Duen, for your submission. So let's go to Komwanza, Felix, and Joseph. And I'd really like to apologize to all those who are requesting for the mic, because we might not be able to admit you due to time constraints, but we'll be holding these spaces. We are going to admit you the next time. So sorry about that. Felix and Joseph, and then Komwanza in that order. 2 minutes each, guys, so that at least we have, for the main speakers, we have at least 20 minutes where they can finalize. Felix? Felix, can you hear me? Okay. Joseph? Yeah, take a go, Felix. I see you. I've muted your mic. Hillary, can you hear Felix?
No, I can't hear anybody.
Okay. Joseph? Okay. Commander?
Thank you much. Thank you, the panel and all listeners. I'll go straight to the point. Now, one, the conversation here and the people faulting the Constitution reminded me of a paper that was written by Professor Okoth Ogendo, Constitution Without Constitutionalism, the African Paradox. And when you read that paper, the takeaway usually is that you cannot legislate away bad manners. We have a cultural problem. The politicians come to us during every election cycle. They give us handouts and we vote them to power. That's a cultural problem. I think there needs to be reflection on our part as the populace and, of course, the political class, because really we cannot legislate that habit away. In fact, when you go to the UK, Britain does not have a unified one document that they call a constitution, but one of the most organized societies. Now, the main point here, what's the next pressure point? You realize that the president has dissolved his entire cabinet, including the Attorney General. The president needs the Attorney General because every decision I think he'll be making after tomorrow that does not have the input, especially if it has anything directly relating or ancillary to the law, then that decision can always be challenged in court, because the Attorney General is the principal legal advisor to the president. Number two, we see what happened to Farah Maalim when he seemed sympathetic of the regime and what they're doing. People followed him to a hotel where he was in Mombasa, and they made him stay there uncomfortable. You see what happened to Osama Otero. When the president will need to constitute a new cabinet, I think if we pile enough pressure on Parliament, on him, and on each one of us, he may lack anybody to serve in his cabinet because people would be afraid of being tainted. When you read the 48 Laws of Power, law number 10, it says that avoid the unhappy and the unlucky. If we do not have anybody serving in his cabinet and the president is isolated, then I think over time pressure will mount and the president may have to step down. Thank you so much, and God bless all of us.
Thanks, Kamwanza. Ambassador Ambrose, please go. 2 minutes.
Thank
and
you.
then Bazuri.
Thank you so much. Can you hear me? Am I audible?
Yes.
Okay, thank you so much. This is Ambassador Ambrose Lasoi, PWD President Kenya. I would like only to echo what our predecessors have talked about. Thank you, Dr. Miguna for highlighting on the constitutional strategy and our own 2010 constitution. To say the truth, the constitution of Kenya does not have a problem. And when I see people like Raila Odinga is trying to join the government, he's trying to cover up about all the sins they have made. Raila Odinga, we know a lot of the scandals that align Raila Odinga with the current regime and all other the political big men in this country. But now let me just speak about something here about persons living with disabilities. As their leader, I'm not happy because the Constitution of Kenya have a lot of privileges to people living with disabilities. That the problem is implementation. And the other thing about this Constitution is that this Constitution have some departments. It's giving out the room for some departments which is not even in line with other ministries here. So when we are speaking about these departments, this Constitution have given us a right. But so I'm finalizing is that we need to stand up and have a topic on how are we going to make this Constitution effective to bring out the equity and equality in a dignified way. That is what I can say today. Maybe the other time we can get Genz, we speak a lot about this issue. But for now, the pressure we need to have is to have a talk on how are we going to implement this Constitution, and we remove some section. And Radul, you will allow me for some seconds, that is that we need to remove some powers, some institutions, especially in Senate, in National Assembly. We need to remove Senate completely. We remain with National Assembly. We need to remain the position of women rep and allow women to fight like other people. So thank you so much. I think when I get another chance, I will just deliberate on other issues. Thank you so much.
Yes, actually, I would like us to have a totally different session, and I would like to just explain that the first time I met Ambassador on a space, it was when the finance bill wasn't yet rejected, and he is one of the people living with disabilities in Kenya, and he explained how it impacted them, how they were lied to and were taken to some place to go and do a rubber stamping of what's it called, public participation, but they were not even given the time to speak, they were really affected. And he was on the space also trying to tell people how much the gadgets that he uses would cost. But if you turn around, what he was actually trying to say, he was telling us how the poor cannot access these things. So if you're in here and working with people with disabilities back home in Kenya, do get connected to him, and let's also try to see how our government can also protect the vulnerable, because it cannot be that everyone is really under pressure, and the vulnerable ones are also put under more pressure. Bazuri, 2 minutes, and then the speakers are going to close.
Thank you so much, Mike, and I hope you can hear me. First of all, is to join the others in condoling with those that have lost their lives and the families that are agonizing at the moment, looking for their kin. They can't find them. I never thought in 2024 we would be talking about things that were done in 1900s. It is backward, and we cannot continue business as usual. And therefore, I want to be very, very aware that the group of people that have been speaking here have spoken and have said a lot of things that, most of them not new at all. These are things that we have been agitating for, and it is now time to action line, to go to the field and make sure that all the talks that we've made, all the things that we've been wishing to do, the time has come. We've talked enough, we have strategized enough, and we cannot continue now using our mouths. We now have to use what now need to be done next. And I want to also acknowledge and thank the movement, the Generation Z. I might be their cousin or maybe in between there, but I want to say that, when the idea comes, nobody can stop it, and this is where we are at. Now, the weak point here and the pressure that we must continue putting on is that we must not even entertain an idea that would say, let us go sit with what we are now talking. We are the people who want to shape this country and how we want it to go. We've been told so many things, and people have been told, nyinyi ni viongozi wa kesho. Kesho it's an abstract thing that we never know and we will never want to think about. In terms of leadership, we are going to lead it today and forever. I therefore want to submit that the constitution that we do have, as many people have talked about, is very progressive, but people who have been given mandate and responsibilities to implement and to make sure that things within that constitution gives Kenya a new tone have failed us. Then it therefore calls me to say this. First of all, anything that is presidential appointee as of now should go home. Go home completely, because it has failed to work. President has Ruto made sure that the cabinet went home. He should also be preparing to go home as well, because he has no business to do in Kenya, to be honest. And Kenya is not less, or it does not lack in any way capacity people who can lead it with integrity in so many ways. So, cabinet's home. The next, I think, should be anybody who is appointed home, and no dialogue whatsoever. Anybody thinking that we can go for a dialogue is doomed, because we cannot do that. And lastly, as I conclude, is that, as General said, the people in the diaspora, you have a responsibility to play the safety net, and we cannot at any point afford to even think that we cannot do without you people. We do need you, and we need you to be at the forefront, and we need you to keep safe the data that we are collecting, all the materials that we are likely to be using going forward. We will need you to be with us side by side, not anybody behind anybody. No time for that. And lastly, Marge, thank you so much for organizing the space with Hillary and Neto, and I hope life will be great moving forward. I am looking forward to a better Kenya, where mtoto wa masikini atakuwa anajivunia kuwa Mkenya, si kuvumilia kuwa Mkenya. Time has come, we must change our ways of doing things. Thank you so much, Marge.
Thanks so much. Tari Kimani. Now we're going to the closing session. So I will begin with Dr. Mkawasi. Yes, I'm sorry for butchering your name. And so one question I have to every speaker as they finish off, I'm of the opinion that I know people have a right to do what they want to do or suggest what they want to do, but I have a feeling that if somebody is suggesting, implementing something at the county level, then these are actually people who are distracting from the movement of of the current ruling party that we have, which is the National Party. If you could also just spend 30 seconds on that as you submit your closing remarks. Over to you, Dr. Terry.
Thank you very much, Maj. This is where strategy becomes really important. You need to negate the other. One action doesn't need to negate the other as long as you're clear on mission. So if there are people on the ground in a county somewhere and they have the wherewithal to implement what needs to be implemented towards the same mission we all want, then that is where we need to figure out how we're strategizing so that at some point all the tributaries meet. And that is why I was saying, right now, take your time to solidify your in the counties. It's possible to actually have a staying on mission kind of approach. I don't think there's anything wrong with that personally, with somebody deciding somewhere in Garissa or Kisumu or wherever deciding that they want to take action on the ground. That is fine for me as long as your mission is clear for everybody and your strategy is clear. Thank you.
Thanks. Do you have more on closing remarks or shall we proceed to the next? Because we're closing now.
Oh, okay,
yes.
Still me?
With your closing remarks.
Okay. Yeah, on the pressure points that you need to concentrate on right now, I feel is having a strategy. And as you work on your strategies, I have said this to other people, create that war chest because you're going to need it. You guys on the ground are going to need it. There are those of us who are far away, but who are able to be completely useful to the revolution from wherever we are. If we look at how governments have been, how systems have been and changed to better systems, all the way from the days of Hitler, these guys were able to do the work they did.
In Mount Kenya, we used Jubilee Party, and members of parliament that are vying, utasikia wakisema serikali inaenda pande gani. It's not everyone who has this information, and for you get a ticket of the side where the government is going. Usually, it is not who is popular, it is who has been anointed to be the leader. That's why everyone was scampering for a UDA ticket. All the Jubilee people, they just jumped to this other side and got tickets. Actually, bought tickets. They just buy these tickets to secure getting another term in parliament. And what I would say, study the Cherera for what they were talking about, the results of 2022. But because the country is highly charged, people don't listen to the details. But for example, Kiambu County had an excess of 500,000 votes on one candidate. But people say, these things are very small, they're not going to sway an entire election. Let's not look at them. But those things could sway a whole election. No one has ever looked keenly or talked about Smartmatic and how Kenyan data is diverted and changed. Or a logarithm is set to change or sway the data. That is what happens on Kenyan election. This is not local. This is not something done locally. It is an international manipulation of a Kenyan election. Someone needs to write a document about how we've lost our sovereignty. That's why when our president was sworn into office, he has done everything that's a foreign policy. It's not a Kenyan policy. In the Kibaki administration, we had public participation about GMO. Documents sit in parliament. But what did Ruto do? Immediately he came in, he lifted the ban on GMO. No public participation, nothing discussed in parliament, and GMO was allowed in Kenya. Every single loan that is coming to Kenya right now through IMF and World Bank has a social economic agenda attached to it. We give you this loan, you pass this bill, you pass this bill. That's why right now the agriculture bill has been passed. That's why right now it's a criminal activity to carry out agricultural activities unless you have a diploma in agriculture. Otherwise you face a jail term or a bail. If anyone is willing, lawyers listening to this, please audit every single bill passed in the Kenyan parliament. It's a foreign agenda. It's not a Kenyan agenda. Social economic structures. Like on the 24th of July, there's a case, there are Kenyan agriculturists who have come together who are suing because it's now criminal to share seeds in Kenya. These are legislations that have gone through the parliament. That's why I would say this is the worst government I've ever seen as a Kenyan. Because no one cares about the bills they have passed in that parliament. Why is our president jumping as high as the foreign masters want him to jump? Because they played a big role in his presidency. He has no stance to fight for the Kenyan people. That's why he was the best candidate for them. And if anyone feels like my sentiments are not true, tell me one single thing he has done that is good for the Kenyan people. Even this finance bill is all a social economic structure attached to IMF funding. When you study all these things that have happened in this country, you realize the foreign hand in the Kenyan democracy, it is so huge. And I will shock you when I tell you, even on the opposition side, a high level, they always know where the presidency is going. I will shock you to tell you, even Raila knew, let me do this thing to maintain my backyard, to maintain the control of half of the country. He has a big following. To control Azimio, to have a big number members of parliament in parliament. But he knew he's not going to ascend to presidency. Because he sort of lost the willingness to keep fighting, because it's a big monster to fight. When the election is done, he'll quickly be meeting the ambassadors. He'll quickly be meeting the EU commissioners, because the players that be have to manipulate both sides. That's why even now, his AU seat is really attached to these foreign bodies. They just want to balance an equilibrium in Kenya, because we are the products in the market. We are the slaves. They're squeezing every little life out of us as they manipulate a sitting government and manipulate an opposition. And as we sit here, discussions are underway of building a government of sort of national unity. I don't know if they're going to call it coalition. And they think that is going to quell the cry of Kenyans right now. They just want a working situation to continue pushing their social economic agendas, which are not Kenyan, which are not for the good of any Kenyan. And you will see, they are going to have cabinet positions next week or next week, and you will see what these people are doing. They are working together. If they were not working together, none of these players is coming out clearly and listening to what Kenyans are saying. Because what Kenyans are saying, this government is not fighting for us. Even on the smallest level, this government is not fighting for Kenyans. For the people that can study and do this, if you study the Venezuelan hand in the Kenyan government, it was huge. The foreigners played a big role in diverting the will of the people. And I will tell you again and again, see today is not what Kenyans voted. Thank you, Eric, for your time.
What do you mean?
don't. I wonder. I wonder.
What I'm going to teach you in.
So, Cyprian, go on.
Okay, thank you, Eric. Allow me to bring in Mr. Tony Kashoka into the broadcast. So kindly you can proceed.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Can you hear me? This is an important subject because it's dealing with economic pain. Economic pain is actually the whole purpose of any government. And unfortunately for ourselves right now, the government is not being held to account. When the framers of the 2010 Constitution put it together, under Article 4, which declared Kenya to be a republic, there was the provision that Kenya is a sovereign republic under Part 1, but under Part 2, the Republic of Kenya shall be a multi-party democratic state founded on national values and the principles of government that follow Article 10. The reason that I'm bringing this up is because the only way in which a democratic republic can function is when the government of the day is held to account by the people of the country. Hello? Am I being heard?
Yes. Go on. We can hear you.
And I want to bring this alarm because Jimmy Wanjigi was speaking competently about what the executives have been doing wrong. And he was talking about the need for us, the people, to hold that government to account. But the only reason that we are being asked to hold the government to account is because of the complete failure of the opposition. And therefore, we cannot have any discussion about progressing Kenya with only Ruto must go. There must include the